Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Commissioner's Report. I'm your host, Tricia Pichette, and joining me today is Commissioner George Lindsey.
Well, hello there. How are we doing?
Very well, thanks.
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
Look forward to it.
Now, you and the commissioners have been out and about giving State of the County addresses and meetings.
Well, it seems to be this time of year when we have the State of the Union, and then the governor gives the State of the State address. So it just seems appropriate to give a State of the County presentation. And it comes on the heels of the County Commission's retreat, in which we review our status on prior year goals and set new goals for the coming year. And it's a kickoff of not only where we are, but where we want to be and setting priorities for the staff moving forward to adopt next year's budget. So with the various interest groups around the county, the chambers and the Kiwanis and Rotaries and other civic organizations kind of asked for a State of the County presentation. So each of us kind of customize our own what we think is important and focus on that. And so I've made a few presentations and have a few others booked, and just thought we would share some of those observations.
Fantastic.
The first is to give just a brief orientation on the map that represents the county commission districts. Polk County has a system whereby we elect commissioners at large. That means although I live and represent District 1 on the map here, the smallest area, I run countywide. So do my colleagues. The idea is to make sure that we have broad representation throughout the county and not all the commissioners are concentrated in one part of the county. But the benefit is that we still required to run countywide. And the districts are drawn based on population, not geography. You'll notice my district is the most dense, District 1, yet Mr. Wilson's District 2 is in almost the entire south half of the county. Geographically, he has 5 or 10 times the area that District 1 represents, but it's basically the same number of people. After the 2020 census, these maps will be redrawn to reflect the population shifts. Certainly the growth up in the northeast part of the county will have an impact on that. So it's anxious to see what the new district maps might be a couple of years from now after the consensus data is gathered. So that's kind of a kickoff as to how we got to where we are.
Okay.
Some of the challenges we face are, again, looking back, the recession back in the 07-08 period, where our revenues, the values of all taxable values in the county peaked back in 07 and 08. Then we begin to see the decline in valuation, which translates to tax revenues also decline, and begin to climb out of that era during the 12-13 period. And we've seen some steady growth since then. So now in fiscal year 19-20, which we're in now, those taxable values are just barely above where they were back in 07-08. So our predecessor boards had some challenges as to how to get through those times when the revenues were down and the demand for services weren't down, but the revenues were. So now we're back to that same level we were 10 or 12 years ago, and the foreseeable future appears to be steady increases going forward, which is what the chart reflects of those increases. Now, recent events with the coronavirus, how is that going to affect us? Probably not drastically in total revenues, but there will be some slight decline in sales tax revenues and some of those consumer activated things. But we'll just have to take that as it comes. Yeah, deal with it at the time. Another chart that is draw attention to is this big red ball here. All ad valorem taxes, which is all property taxes, both your home and your land, as well as business property and business equipment, tangible personal property. Not only does a grocery store or a warehouse have the land and the building tax, but the equipment inside that building is also taxed at the same rate. So that's all referred to as ad valorem, both real estate as well as tangible personal property. And the estimated value for that in this current fiscal year total is $198 million. The rest of the budget is made up of other revenues, other charges, and miscellaneous fees that are collected. But the property tax is the one that hits people most. You know, when do I get my tax bill? In November? You know, how much have I got to write this check for? Or fortunately, most people have that built into their mortgage payment, and it's there when they need to be paid. But I've put this in perspective. Of this $198 million, 90% of those dollars are dedicated to running the sheriff's office, both the law enforcement as well as the jails. So the county really relies on a small part of ad valorem to run its daily operations, but a lot of revenue from other sources keeps the doors open.
So again, you said 90%?
90% of all ad valorem is used to run the jail and law enforcement. An interesting thing, when someone is arrested or becomes in custody of a jail system, the county, the public, is responsible for their health care needs while they're in jail. Now, we have a very, very sophisticated and well-manned and staffed infirmary inside the jail. And for whatever sniffles and sneezes someone has inside the jail, they're taken care of. But if they need something special, even chemo or dialysis or some other extended medical treatment, they go outside the jail for the clinics and hospitals for that treatment. Just a few years ago, that outside the county jail medical treatment was about $4 or $5 million. Today, it's over $11 million and growing. We have an aging inmate population. Some of the lifestyles that they experience in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are now catching up with them. And these are folks that are not always yet adjudicated guilty, but they're in the custody of our county jail system, and we have that responsibility to take care of them. That $11 million is not in the sheriff's budget. That's in the general fund that the county commission has to accommodate. And so we're working with the sheriff's office, with the judicial system, the judges, and the whole law enforcement situation to help minimize that. But it is a growing concern. Another challenge that faces us is road capacity needs throughout the county. The county, on this particular map, we have divided the county into planning zones. While they somewhat reflect the district zones we referred to earlier, they're not entirely that, but planning purposes because they have common growth pressures. Some time ago, the tilt between the population on the east side of the county and the west side of the county did, like a teeter-totter, it did tilt to the east. Till a few years ago, majority of the population was on the west side of the county.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. And the west side of the county has about the equal population as the east, but the east side of the county has half the lane miles of road that the west side of the county has. So we're going to have to do some catch up to provide meet the transportation needs on the east side of the county. And what this map reflects is where those growth pressures are. Is anticipated that 73 lane miles will be needed on the the west side of the county, just 34 miles in the south half of the county, but 62% of the demand for new road capacity will be in that northeast quadrant of the county. That anybody that lives in that part of the county realizes the pressures that we're facing in that area.
Wow. And
it's going to be challenging to meet that need. This graph is probably, or this chart is probably overwhelming. On the next one, talk about significant capital improvement projects. Lake Wilson Road, for example, is top of the list. Just 1 mile road in the northeast part of the county, 1 mile long, from Ronald Reagan Parkway north to the county line. That road moving from 2 lanes to 4 lanes will cost $25 million for 1 lane mile of 2 lane miles. We're adding 2 lanes. And it's going to take almost 5 years to get it from conception to conclusion.
Wow.
Someone pointed out that we won World War II in 4 years, and it's going to take 5 years to build this road. But that's probably apples and oranges, but it's an interesting observation. We also are embarking on West Pipkin Road to improve that from Hardin back to the west in front of the Geico building, where it's already 4 lane, and then providing for 3 lanes back to the east from Hardin to Florida Avenue. We'd like to be able to make that 4 lane, but simply don't have the revenue stream, to support that at this time. Perhaps we get that on the next list. So while we have $441 million of these road projects in the pipeline today, they are funded, the money is in the bank. We are going through design and engineering and permitting and right-of-way acquisition today. The money is in the bank. That's the good news. The bad news is there's $700 million of unfunded demands for projects that were referred to back on the earlier page, the demands for in the northeast part of the county. This next map kind of identifies where those unfunded capacity projects lie. And as we stated, the west half of the county is in pretty good shape. The east half in that northeast area is where the deficiency is, and we've got to do a lot of catching up to do. It's a challenge. It's going to be very difficult to meet this demand. The commission often meets with chamber groups or vision groups from around the county, high school kids that come through, and other business leaders that meet with the county, and we have a dialogue and exchange. And it was a bit poignant recently. A young lady was with us and raised her hand for the question and looked at us and said, "What are you going to do about the traffic situation where I live in the northeast part of the county in the years to come?" And it kind of caught me by surprise. Shouldn't have. And as I pondered my answer, the sad thing is, young lady, this is as good as it's going to get in your lifetime.
Wow.
The time and the resources it takes to respond to these demands are so long and so voluminous. It's really going to be a challenge. Now, working with our city partners, we try to engage the state DOT to help and recognize the demands and the needs, and to a lesser degree from the federal level. But it's a huge undertaking that probably our greatest challenge right now. Many of our other issues have paths to success. Our water cooperative has brought the cities together to address our long-range water supply needs. The county has made a priority of our EMS and fire staffing that has not kept pace with growth, and now we have a path to make sure that that is the case. We give our first responders the tools and the training and the equipment they need to protect the property and the lives in Polk County. So that is on a path. We have 4 fire stations under construction at this time, and we have 4 on the drawing boards when that's done. And I look forward to providing facilities that these firefighters, paramedics, young men and women, because it's a young man and woman's occupation, not an old guy's occupation. They deserve those facilities. It's not Taj Mahal, but it's very comfortable, it's very functional. It's fun, it is challenging. And the benefit of bringing different people from different parts of the county representing the citizens of Polk County to use our varied backgrounds, our varied experiences in making these tough choices to set priorities. Absolutely, without a doubt, first priority is public safety. Law enforcement, fire, EMS services, that is our highest priority. That's what government is here to do. Then we start taking the resources after that and we assign them to the other challenges: roads, drainage, transportation, Then we start working on the things that make life enjoyable, you know, parks and recreation, Circle B, and those kind of things. And so as that priority list, you start winding down, there's less and less resources for that. But I think this board has done a commendable job and been responsive, and we just keep doing what we can.
Well, thank you very much for your hard work and for this show. I mean, this was meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts, but it was very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing it.
My privilege. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of the Commissioner's Report.